Nestled within the picturesque Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia, the small town of Enoch seemed the perfect haven for those seeking a quiet life. It was a place where everyone knew each other, and the biggest crime usually involved a misplaced piece of livestock or a rowdy Friday night at the local bar. But in the autumn of 1978, Enoch would become the setting for one of the most chilling unsolved mysteries in American history. Sarah Bennett was a high school senior with dreams of becoming a writer, known for her kind heart and bright smile. She was loved by everyone in the community. On October 12th, she went missing. Her family, frantic with worry, reported her disappearance to Sheriff Tom Ellis, a seasoned lawman who had lived in Enoch his entire life. The search for Sarah began immediately, with volunteers scouring the forests and rivers that surrounded the town. Days turned into weeks, with no sign of the young girl. The town was gripped by fear and paranoia, as rumors of strange occurrences and shadowy figures seen at night spread like wildfire. 1 month after Sarah's disappearance, a hiker stumbled upon a gruesome discovery deep in the woods. It was Sarah's body, or what was left of it. The once lively girl was now a lifeless husk, her body mutilated in ways that horrified even the most hardened investigators. Carved into her skin were symbols that no one recognized, and her eyes had been removed, replaced with polished stones. The discovery of Sarah's body brought in investigators from across the state. They examined every inch of the crime scene, but the clues were sparse and cryptic. No fingerprints, no DNA, nothing that could lead them to the perpetrator. The only lead they had were the strange symbols, which experts suggested might be linked to ancient rituals or cult practices. As the investigation stalled, Sheriff Ellis began to notice a pattern. Other towns in the Blue Ridge region had experienced similar disappearances over the past decades, each case unsolved and each victim bearing the same horrific markings. It was as if a malevolent force had been lurking in the mountains for generations, preying on the innocent. Determined to find the truth, Ellis delved into the town's history. He uncovered stories of settlers who spoke of a dark presence in the woods, a creature that demanded sacrifices to ensure the safety of the community. These tales, once dismissed as folklore, now seemed to hold a terrifying truth. One night, while poring over old records in his office, Ellis received an anonymous tip. The caller, with a voice trembling with fear, claimed to have seen strange rituals being performed in an abandoned cabin deep in the forest. The sheriff, accompanied by a small team of deputies, ventured into the woods under the cover of darkness. The cabin was a relic from another time, its wood rotting and covered in moss. As they approached, they heard chanting from within. Peering through a crack in the wall, they saw hooded figures surrounding a makeshift altar. On the altar lay another girl, unconscious but alive. The symbols carved into Sarah's body adorned the walls, glowing faintly in the candlelight. Before they could act, the figures sensed their presence. A chaotic struggle ensued, but the deputies were able to rescue the girl and apprehend 2 of the cult members. The rest vanished into the night, seemingly swallowed by the forest itself. Under interrogation, the captured cultists revealed little. They spoke of an ancient entity that demanded offerings and promised protection in return. They claimed they were merely servants, chosen to carry out its will. Despite their confessions, the identity of the entity remained a mystery, and the ringleader of the cult was never found. The rescued girl, though traumatized, eventually recovered and provided key details that helped identify more members of the cult. Over the following months, A series of raids led to multiple arrests, but the true mastermind remained elusive. The town of Enoch slowly began to heal, but the scars of that autumn night would never fully fade. The woods that once provided solace now harbored memories of unimaginable horror. Sheriff Ellis, haunted by the events, retired the following year, leaving behind a legacy of perseverance and bravery. To this day, the mystery of the Blue Ridge cult remains unsolved. Locals still speak in hushed tones about the shadows that move between the trees, and the legend of the entity continues to send shivers down the spines of those who dare to venture too far into the forest. Some say it's still out there, waiting for its next offering, while others believe it's merely a ghost story to keep children close to home. But for the people of Enoch, the horror was all too real, and the memory of Sarah Bennett serves as a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk even in the most idyllic of places. In the heart of a bustling city, surrounded by the hum of everyday life, stood an old dilapidated house on Maple Street. Long abandoned, it had become an eyesore, with boarded-up windows and overgrown weeds. Yet despite its decayed state, there was an eerie aura about the house that made people avoid it. The stories about the house varied. Some said it was haunted by the ghost of a woman who had been murdered there. Others believed it was a den for vagrants and criminals. But no one knew the truth until the summer of 1992, when a series of disappearances shook the city. It began with a young woman named Lisa Thompson, who went missing on her way home from a late-night shift. Her friends and family were devastated, and the police launched a full-scale investigation. Despite their efforts, Lisa was never found, and her disappearance became another cold case in the city's records. A month later, a second woman, Karen Mills, vanished under similar circumstances. She too was returning home late at night when she was last seen. Panic began to spread through the community, and people became wary of going out after dark. As the summer wore on, more women went missing. Each case followed the same pattern: late at night, with no witnesses and no evidence left behind. The police were at a loss, and the city was gripped by fear. One evening, a local journalist named David Harris decided to investigate the disappearances on his own. David was known for his tenacity and willingness to take risks, and he believed the old house on Maple Street held the key to the mystery. Despite warnings from friends and colleagues, he ventured into the house armed with a flashlight and a camera. The air inside the house was thick with dust and decay. As David explored, he felt an overwhelming sense of dread. The walls seemed to close in on him, and the silence was deafening. But he pressed on, determined to uncover the truth. In the basement, he stumbled upon a hidden door, partially concealed by debris. With great effort, he pried it open, revealing a narrow staircase leading further down into the darkness. As he descended, the smell of rot grew stronger, and his flashlight flickered ominously. At the bottom of the stairs, David found himself in a large, dimly lit chamber. The sight that greeted him was straight out of a nightmare. The walls were lined with makeshift cells, each containing the skeletal remains of women who had been chained and left to die. In the center of the room stood a crude altar, stained with blood and surrounded by disturbing symbols. David's heart pounded as he took in the gruesome scene. He quickly snapped photos and recorded his findings, knowing that he had uncovered something truly horrific. But before he could leave, he heard a noise behind him. Turning, he saw a figure emerging from the shadows, a gaunt, pale man with hollow eyes and a twisted smile. The man moved with an unnatural grace, and David realized with a jolt of terror that he was the one responsible for the disappearances. A frantic chase ensued, with David narrowly escaping the clutches of the deranged killer. He burst out of the house and ran to the nearest police station, breathless and trembling. The evidence he provided led to a massive police raid on the house, and the killer was finally apprehended. The man, identified as Arthur Gorman, had been living in the house for years, luring unsuspecting women to their deaths. His motives remained a mystery, but the horrors he inflicted were all too real. The city breathed a sigh of relief as justice was served, but the memories of those lost would haunt the community forever. The house on Maple Street was demolished, leaving behind an empty lot. But the legend of the silent house lived on, a grim reminder of the evil that can hide in plain sight. Pine Hollow was a small, secluded town in the Pacific Northwest, surrounded by dense forests and shrouded in perpetual mist. The town had a reputation for being peaceful and serene, but beneath its tranquil exterior lay a dark secret that few dared to speak of: the legend of the Phantom. The legend dated back to the early 1900s, when a series of gruesome murders rocked the town. The victims were all young women, found brutally slain in the woods, their bodies arranged in bizarre and macabre displays. The killer was never caught, and over the years the story of the Phantom grew into a chilling local folklore. In the fall of 1985, the Phantom returned. It began with the disappearance of Emily Crawford, a college student who had come to Pine Hollow for a research project. She was last seen heading into the woods, camera in hand, eager to capture the beauty of the autumn landscape. When she didn't return, a search party was organized, but no trace of her was found. 2 weeks later, another woman, Laura Harris, vanished under similar circumstances. Panic spread through Pine Hollow as the town realized that the legend of the Phantom was no longer just a story to scare children. The police were on high alert, and the townsfolk took extra precautions, but the disappearances continued. Amidst the growing fear, a young journalist named Mark Davis arrived in Pine Hollow. He was drawn to the town by the eerie legend and the promise of a sensational story. Mark was determined to uncover the truth behind the Phantom and put an end to the terror. Mark began his investigation by interviewing the townspeople, collecting old newspaper clippings, and studying the history of Pine Hollow. He learned that the original murders had occurred during the town's logging boom, when many transient workers had passed through. There were whispers of a deranged logger who had lost his family in a tragic accident and had taken out his grief on the innocent. As Mark delved deeper, he started to notice a pattern. The murders and disappearances all occurred near a specific area of the forest, known locally as Devil's Den. It was a place avoided by most, rumored to be cursed and home to malevolent spirits. Despite the warnings, Mark decided to venture into Devil's Den, hoping to find clues that would solve the mystery. Armed with a flashlight, a camera, and a notebook, he set out at dawn. The forest was eerily quiet, and the mist seemed to cling to him like a shroud. Hours passed, and Mark found nothing but the remnants of old logging camps and animal tracks. Just as he was about to turn back, he stumbled upon a hidden clearing. In the center stood an old, decrepit cabin, overgrown with ivy and half-buried in the earth. With trepidation, Mark approached the cabin. The door creaked open with a touch, revealing a scene of horror inside. The walls were covered in faded photographs of the original murder victims, alongside more recent ones, including Emily and Laura. In the center of the room was a makeshift altar, adorned with twisted branches and animal bones. As Mark photographed the scene, he heard a rustling behind him. Turning, he saw a figure emerging from the shadows, a man dressed in ragged clothes, his face hidden beneath a hood. The man's eyes glinted with madness as he raised a rusty axe, moving towards Mark with a chilling determination. Mark's heart raced as he realized he was face to face with the Phantom. He managed to snap a few photos before fleeing the cabin, the deranged killer hot on his heels. The chase through the forest was a blur of fear and adrenaline, but Mark eventually made it back to the safety of the town. The evidence he gathered led to a massive manhunt. The Phantom, identified as Jacob Blackwood, was a recluse who had lived in the woods for decades, driven mad by isolation and a dark obsession with the original murders. He was captured and taken into custody, ending the reign of terror that had plagued Pine Hollow. The town slowly began to heal, but the legend of the Phantom endured. Devil's Den remained a place of dark fascination and fear, a reminder of the evil that can lurk in the hearts of men. And though the Phantom was no more, the woods of Pine Hollow held on to their secrets, whispering them to those brave enough to listen. Until next time, friends, good night.